I now would like to invite Ruba Atala, who's a Palestinian from Gaza, a law graduate, and she's going to speak with us
Thank
now.
you so much. Your Excellencies, members of Parliament, ambassadors, Ambassador Husam Zomlot, distinguished guests, thank you so much for giving me the chance to speak to you today. It's never easy to talk about the Nakba and everything the Palestinian people have gone through. But when I thought about how to talk about my grandparents and the pain that they carried all over their lives, I didn't know how to start actually. Especially that they spent their whole life just waiting the moment to go back home. But in the end, they passed away in another tragedy, what we can call it, the modern Nakba, after the huge missile dropped down into the house that they were sheltered in and killed them. My grandparents were forced to leave their village, Herbia, in 1948, and they displaced to Gaza. They lived in a tent, and then until they built their house in Al-Shati refugee camp. Later, my great-grandfather bought a small piece of land in the closest point to Herbia, in the border, beside the borders between Gaza and occupied Palestine. And then my grandmother inherited this land. She transferred it to a farm. She didn't go back to her home in Al-Shati. And when I asked her many times, said to why, she said, because I need to be close as much as I can to my village, Herbia, until I return. My grandfather as well, he was a bit sensitive, and he cried whenever he spoke about Herbia and his dream to go back to this village. And I used to wonder why he cries continuously even after 70 years. But today, I found the answer. After we lost the house, after we lost home, after we lost Gaza itself. In November 2023, Israel killed my grandparents and occupied the farm that my grandmother inherited from her father. The farm that we all worked on and took care of, the grandchildren, the children, and uncles, aunties. We planted lemon, guava, and olive trees. And now we have nothing. We have no place. We have no even one memory to go back to, not to Herbia and not even to Gaza. But for me, I am lucky. I still have this. And I still have the key of return. It holds the whole story of my grandparents and my family, and the whole grandparents that they forced to leave their villages in 1948. They lived through 2 Nakbas. They carried the whole one, the first one, all over their lives, on their shoulders, and the second one took them away. But through this key, I will be able to save the story and to tell it to the next generations with the sounds of my grandparents, the sound of my grandfather Abdelaziz Aliyan and my grandmother Zainab Al-Ghul, from A to Z, because they killed them, but I am still alive and I have this key. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I'd like to welcome Andrew Papes, who's the co-chair of the Labour Friends of Palestine in the Middle East.
Thank you, Debbie. lovely to be in a room with friends on this day. And Ruba, your grandparents are still alive through the stories that you tell.
Thank you so
And
much.
whatever the world throws at you, them, other Palestinians will not extinguish the love, the care and the stories that you are able to tell through that key and
Hopefully.
elsewhere. And to me that is powerful. I think on behalf of all of us, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
I appreciate it.
My connection is much more humble in terms of family, because actually it's about family, it's about planting fruit trees, it's about children playing with their grandparents. These are the most basic but the most stories. And it goes to the heart of why we are humanitarians and why we care for it. My connection to this wonderful land that is so scarred. Grandfather, a young working class blacksmith assistant, went from England in the First World War to Jerusalem, helping build railways, part of England and the UK's early expansion into land. What he took with him was going from being an agriculture worker to learning a trade as a blacksmith's assistant, was to meet the wonderful people, to see a world that he would never have seen from his normal background and his humble backgrounds, and to bring that back. And that created in me the journey I've taken to bring me to Parliament as a trade unionist, as a campaigner for justice, and those small moments of fragments of family that stay with us, and I think that is the most powerful thing for it. So it is a privilege to join all of you here,
Thank
and
you.
an honour to be here and speak on behalf of Labour Friends of Palestine and the Middle East. I only wish it could be under better circumstances. And for many Palestinian friends in this room, and indeed the Ambassador himself, I know this day is painful not only for what happened then, for what is happening today as well. The total destruction of Gaza, the increasing violence in the West Bank, our failure as an international community to achieve a ceasefire is simply unacceptable and a stain on all of our consciousness in this Parliament that we have not achieved that. And we're perhaps further from that peace or security than we've ever been. Terrible for Palestinians, terrible for the hostages, terrible for us as a world community. Continuing with business as normal is not how we're going to achieve peace and security. And reaffirming our commitment to international rule of law is how we get there. It has been long established policy of my party and for many in this Parliament and successive UK governments to recognise the Palestinians' inalienable right to self-determination and support the establishment of a Palestinian state. And I'm very privileged, alongside I think about 75 of my Labour colleagues, to have just written to the Prime Minister in these last few days, urging now for the British government to seize this opportunity to work with France and our colleagues on the international level to make June the moment that the British government joins with our partners and recognises the State of Palestine as an irrevocable move to demanding justice and peace in this region. Two permanent members of the UN Security Council, Britain and France, working together, could take decisive action by recognising the State of Palestine as a first step to breaking the deadlock of the last 30 years and creating a political pathway to peace. And if we don't act now, I'm worried there will be no two-state solution left to salvage. And for those who say, not now, I say when. What is the alternative to taking action now? An ongoing cycle of violence with huge regional implications, more death and destruction. Recognition doesn't replace negotiations, it frames them within a context of parity of two equal sides negotiating for justice. Its foundational step towards justice, accountability and a durable peace. In March, 57 Arab countries came together to put forward a unified plan for peace. The plan was welcomed by the UK, France, Germany, Italy, and sets out a constructive blueprint towards achieving peace, security and stability in the region. Britain, of course, has a unique historical responsibility to act. But moreover, we have legal obligations and moral obligations under international law and human rights. 149 UN member states already recognise the State of Palestine. In June, I hope Britain can join them. Thank you.
And it's a pleasure now to welcome Right Honourable Kit Malthouse.
Your Excellencies, friends, we gather together today to remember the Nakba when, as we've been told, more than 750,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes in 1948. For generations, that loss has not been history, it has been daily life. It lives on in refugee camps, in exile, on ID cards, checkpoints, in demolished villages, and names that remain on the lips of grandparents. But remembering the Nakba isn't about erasing anyone else's pain or story. It's about truth. One people's freedom should never come at the price of another's. The Holocaust was a horror beyond words, and Jewish survival is real and sacred. But survival built on someone else's dispossession creates a wound. This is the paradox of 1948, a homeland gained and a homeland lost, a people finding refuge while another became refugees. That paradox, that tragedy still echoes today. Many people say Nakba in the past tense, but today Gaza burns under bombs and children grow up counting the dead instead of the days. In the West Bank, olive trees are uprooted like people, quietly, relentlessly. The Nakba didn't end, it just shifted shape. Now, balance doesn't mean being neutral. It means we face every side of the truth. And it means we can hold both grief and empathy. Israelis and Palestinians deserve safety, freedom, and a future. But there is no shared future without justice, and there is no justice without remembering. And yet, amid all this, we must not lose our grip on each other's humanity. Peace cannot grow in soil soaked with vengeance. Dignity cannot be built on denial. So today, friends, we do not gather to hate. We gather to insist that memory matters, that lives matter, and that this cycle must end. The Nakba is a warning, and if we fail to listen to it, it will continue to echo throughout the world. Thank you.
Bravo.
I'm sorry, Kit, I didn't introduce you properly. I should have said Kit is the chair of the Conservative Middle East Council. We've tried to make sure that this is a cross-party event to show that we all, from all parties, support the Palestinian cause and Palestinian rights and recognition, as Andrew has said. I'm hoping that Callum Miller is here. Callum. Now, Callum is the spokesperson on foreign affairs of the Liberal delegation.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I want to underscore at the outset that Liberal Democrats have consistently sought to support those who champion peace, justice and the rule of international law. That is why today we strongly oppose the extremists, both those in Hamas responsible for atrocities in 2023 and those in the Israeli cabinet who have blatantly advocated the violent annexation of Palestine. As we mark the Nakba this Thursday, it should focus minds on the latest iteration of the conflict. The latest blockade of Gaza, now 70 days old, is a flagrant violation of international law, which heaps more misery and suffering onto Gazans after months of bombardment. The UK government must use all levers at its disposal to put pressure on the Israeli government immediately to reopen aid routes into Gaza, to allow essential goods and supplies to reach those suffering and alleviate the humanitarian crisis. And we should be very clear in our response to the Israeli government's latest proposals for Gaza. Annexing the whole of Gaza and the displacement of Palestinians from the north of the Strip is disgraceful, wrong, and in clear violation of international law. UK leaders, together with our allies, should state clearly and in unity that we absolutely reject the reckless and frankly ridiculous proposals from Donald Trump that have emboldened the Israeli government. It is also vital that the UK ensures no British weapons can be used to perpetrate human rights abuses in Gaza. And that's why Liberal Democrats, in common with parliamentarians from many parties, will continue to call for all UK arms exports to Israel to be blocked. While many have been focused on Gaza, we have seen the increased expansion of settlements and violence in the West Bank. The expansion of illegal Israeli settlements threatened and is realising the continuing dispossession of Palestinians in the West Bank. And so it's shocking that the UK government has failed to provide its assessment of the ICJ's July 2024 advisory opinion. We will continue to urge the government to provide this assessment without delay, as well as outlining the obligations that flow from this judgment for the UK. The government must show its willingness to stand up and say clearly that illegal settler expansion is utterly wrong and will have consequences. These consequences should include banning the UK's trade with the illegal settlements and also sanctioning the extremist ministers Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. The UK government needs to show its seriousness about securing a two-state solution. As I said at the start, the UK has a unique responsibility to the Palestinian people. For this reason, our government should be a leader, not a follower, in responding to developments. My colleagues like Leila Moran and other Liberal Democrats in the House of Lords have brought bills to successive parliaments which would immediately recognise the State of Palestine. This would show the UK's commitment to establishing a just political settlement in the region, together with democratic allies like Sweden, Spain, Norway and Ireland. The government needs to move towards recognition as a matter of urgency, and so I fully support Andrew and his colleagues. The Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary should be close to the plans of President Macron, who has signalled the likely French recognition of Palestine in just a few months' time. Joint recognition by the UK and France would show the UK's opposition to the forced dispossession of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, and show our opposition to the continuing Nakba.
And it's a pleasure now to welcome Brendan O'Hara from the Scottish National Party.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you, Ruba, for your incredibly powerful words, and your grandparents would be so proud of what you've done here today. And I remember it was exactly 2 years ago, across the road at the Central Hall, when we met to remember the 75th anniversary of the Nakba, that I said then that that anniversary gave the international community the opportunity to begin a meaningful discussion to correct the injustice, the historical injustice of the Nakba. And sadly, that seems an awful long time ago, and I don't think anyone present that evening could have imagined that just 24 months later, that international community would have become, at best, passive bystanders, or at worst, actively complicit in a genocide in Gaza. Because I don't think anyone could have imagined, particularly given the historic responsibility that we in the United Kingdom have for what's happened to the Palestinian people since the Balfour Declaration, that we'd also be the ones who would be supplying Israel with the weapons that it requires to carry out those atrocities. And we would be providing the political cover that it desires in order to pursue its historical goal of the complete destruction of Palestine. And since October the 7th, we've witnessed the most egregious breaches of international humanitarian law. We all know that, because we have all had them streamed live to our telephones and our tablets. And therefore the UK government knows that the Netanyahu regime is routinely breaching international humanitarian law, and shamefully they are helping them do it. And as a result, Israel understands that it has been given carte blanche to bomb civilians, to kill journalists, to target healthcare workers, to impose a collective punishment, and to ethnically cleanse Gaza, and increasingly doing so in the West Bank as well. And they're doing that in the full and certain knowledge that there will be no consequence for their action. And that is what impunity looks like. That is what giving a carte blanche results in. And what the UK is doing today is incredibly short-sighted, and it will have profound consequences, because the world can see that the blatant double standards in the application of international law will come back to haunt us. The world knows, we know, that picking and choosing war crimes, the ones we can condemn, the ones we don't, doesn't just fail the victims, it ensures the entire destruction of the system of international law altogether, because there is and there must be an absolute standard, whether friend or foe, and everyone must be judged to that same standard. But that is now not the case, and tragically, international law is being sacrificed at a time when the world needs it most. Ruba, you are living proof of what we all know. that the Palestinians are some of the most resilient people in the world. But you shouldn't have to be. You shouldn't have to endure generations of generational trauma and injustice fighting for those basic human rights and those freedoms that the rest of us take for granted. And I won't dare predict where the world will be when we meet to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Nakba, but I pray it will be in a far better place than we are now. But I know that while the Palestinian people may once again have been failed by the international community, that people around the world will stand with, and they will march for, and they will make themselves heard in support of you. And they will do so for no other reason than it is the right and just thing to do.
Thank you. Bravo.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an absolute honour to welcome our final guest today, the Palestinian ambassador, Husam Zomlot.
What a wonderful gathering, vibe, full house, Debbie. This is a testament to you, to the APPG on Palestine, to Cabo, to all our friends for putting together this event. I cannot thank you enough, and it is very relevant. Brendan, yes, last year we did it in Westminster Hall in a room also packed with hundreds of our friends, but this year we wanted it to be in the House of Commons, in Parliament, in the House that represents the British people, to commemorate a Nakba that is directly related to this house, to this square. So the historic relevance of this meeting is absolutely inspiring for us, and it is a major step. So thank you for doing this. It is almost impossible for me to imagine a more somber occasion than the reason we are gathering here this evening. Not only do we commemorate the Nakba after 77 years, during which there has been no redress and no accountability for those who perpetuated this, the war criminals, the mass ethnic cleansing of Roba's grandparents, of my grandparents, of 2/3 of the Palestinian people. But we do so at a time of ongoing Nakba and genocide against our people, as you have heard from previous speakers, as you have seen in the documentary. And we are reminded that the Nakba did not end in 1948. But unlike the Nakba, which was carried out in the shadows, in the dark, massacre by massacre, a genocide is being carried out in broad daylight, on our screens, live streamed, and unmissable. But I particularly want to really extend our gratitude for speakers from all parties today. Andrew from Labour, our good friend. Kit Malthouse from the Conservative Party. Colum Miller from the Liberal Democrats. Brendan O'Hara from the Scottish National Party, for showing this unity among the British parties, for commemorating our agony, our Nakba, and for calling the UK government to take action. And we see the growing support among the UK MPs here in this House for peace and justice in Palestine and for upholding international law, and it is indeed reassuring for us. And allow me also to thank my colleagues, the ambassadors here, for really honoring us. And there are many of you, Ambassador of Egypt, Ambassador of Lebanon, Ambassador of Tunisia, Ambassador of Yemen, representatives from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia. I see many, Algeria, of course, and many I know I will miss. But your presence here means a lot. But also allow me to recognize the presence of leaders and dignitaries of the Palestinian community here. And please mingle with them. Many are here today, including Saeed Shhadi here, a veteran leader of our community and who leads the efforts for curing our children in Gaza in many charities. We have doctors here. I see Dr. Lina in Nashif, a prominent doctor here. We have business community, a very humble one, just sitting there, Amjad Amjad Bseisu, huh? And we have intellectuals and writers. By the way, one of our most important writers and columnists is Roba's father. That is, please meet our friends, of course, Akram and all of our friends. I know I forgot many of you. I know we have Muhammad Murar, I can see, but what a room full of the backbone of our community here from all fields. And we have Fida coming all the way from Bournemouth, from our community. Please meet her. She has just finished another big protest in Bournemouth. The Red Line, have you seen the Red Line, the long Red Line? That's their idea. But this is an occasion for all of us to come together, not only for remembrance, and remembering is important, but to work together, to continue the march together. Because the scenes that are coming from Gaza is simply heartbreaking. And you all know that numbers have exceeded 60,000. Mostly children and women. And in the West Bank, as we heard from previous speakers, things are not less worse. In fact, I was in the West Bank recently, and what I saw was unthinkable. Unthinkable. In every sense. While there is some attention on Gaza, there is less attention on what Israel is doing in the West Bank. So my friends, if I begin to list Israel's crimes from 1948 onward, I'll have to keep you here maybe all of the evening and all of tomorrow. But I would prefer to look ahead, because one thing for sure, we cannot return to the status quo ante. So honorable members, we need to work together for a better future based on the rule of law and the principles of justice and equality. Just recently, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, said, I quote, "It is unacceptable for any group of people to have lived with no state for longer than I have been alive." And he's right. It is not acceptable that generations of young Palestinians, including Roba and her siblings, have grown up under the dark shadow of oppression, occupation, displacement, siege, and the denial of the very basic rights. Together, let's make a commitment to change this, to end this. But in order to do this, first we must acknowledge that the prevalent approach for the last 30 years has failed. The approach of appeasement and impunity for Israel did not bring us any closer to peace or security. While we, the Palestinians, negotiated in good faith to end the occupation, Israel negotiated to entrench the occupation. Entrench the occupation, expanding its control on the ground, and the rest is history. You know what happened in the last 30 years. The result is not peace, but apartheid, permanent occupation, and endless conflicts. It has been the UK government's stated policy to support our inalienable right to self-determination and the establishment of a Palestinian state. Andrew and friends, now is the time to put words into action before it is too late. Next month, the UN is hosting the conference on the two-state solution. It's a Saudi-French initiative. There's a lot of regional and international momentum as we speak. This is the moment for the UK to step up, to act, to lead. Not least because the UK has a moral, historical, and legal responsibility to do so. There will, of course, be those who say, in this House, who say that they support state recognition, of course, but not now. They say now is not the right time. If not now, as Andrew said, then when? Yes, now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Children are literally dying of malnutrition in Gaza. Now is not the time to sit on our hands. Aid workers are being assassinated in daylight. Over 18,000 children are now orphaned. Gaza has become home to the biggest cohort of children amputees. And you all know that Israel has killed more than 15,000 children in the last 19 months. So non-recognition, my friends, non-recognition at this stage is not impartiality. It is not neutrality. It is a decision. It is a decision. A decision that gives Israel an effective veto power on any peace, any prospects, any resolution. It is a decision on the part of the UK government to give Israel a veto power over our right to self-determination. It is a decision. Delaying recognition is a decision and an endorsement of the extreme right-wing settler colonial agenda. It is an endorsement of the colonization and the annexation of the West Bank. It is an endorsement of the genocide in Gaza. That's the non-recognition for you. It is an endorsement of Smotrich and Ben-Gvir and, of course, Netanyahu. That's non-recognition for you. It gives legitimacy to policies that destroy homes, displace families, and seek to erase Palestinian identity. It is a green light for continued expansion into Lebanon, Syria, and you see the bombardment, the encroachment, ensuring ongoing instability in the region. That is non-recognition for you. Yet, recognition is legal. It is a legal requirement as per international law. It is democratic because the vast majority of the public in this country are for it. And this House has voted overwhelmingly for it. It is democratic. It is also corrective of the history and the role of the UK, of Britain, the Balfour Declaration and the cancellation of the Palestinian people. This is the time to uncancel the Palestinian people. It is corrective of last 30 years of doing it in the wrong way. And finally, of course, it's not the last step, Andrew. And please, we need to tell the government, we don't mean recognition to be a last step, the final step. It's a first step, but it's a first fundamental step that should be followed by other steps to make sure that we achieve the desired goal of establishing a Palestinian state. It must be followed by sanctions, followed by arms embargo column, followed by ban on settlement products, followed by accountability for those who are criminals, followed by the full application of international law. It is not the final step, it is the first step. But every day we wait for taking that first step, we reap what we have been reaping over the last 30 years. And I would like to conclude by saying this. We do demand of the UK government to uphold its obligation under international law, to lead and not to follow. Peace cannot be built upon the denial of Palestinian rights. Peace cannot and will not be achieved and built upon the denial of the Palestinian rights. And my friends, as we mark the 77th year of the Nakba, we do so not with resignation. Look at the Palestinian lot here, starting with the key and the spirit of Roba. We do so not with resignation, but with resolve. We carry our history and we carry our keys not as a burden, but as a torch. And we look to our friends, especially here in Britain, to walk with us towards a future that is not shaped by fear or force, but by freedom, equality, and dignity for all. And we are closing, my friend. We are closing on that goal, and that goal is a free Palestine. Thank you. Palestine!
Free Palestine! Free Palestine!